The book of Proverbs, verse 17 and 18. Do not gloat when your enemy falls. When they stumble, do not let your heart rejoice. Verse 18. Or the Lord will see and disapprove and turn his wrath away from them. Okay, so, hi everybody, this is Christian RPG Gamers. So I just have like maybe like a little bit of a cold. It's kind of coming to the end, but I'm not sure what my voice is gonna sound like. So, but this is the background footage from a video game called Slay the Spire. Okay, so I guess I wanted to let's call this video 5 reasons why, as a Christian, to enjoy storytelling. Okay, so I think like reason number 1 that I'll use is because storytelling, in a sense, it leaves a mark on this world. So the basic premise is this: is that, you know, we are alive, and then one day, as human beings, all human beings have an ending. We have an expiration date. You know, we're gonna perish and die, and the only things that will be left here on this earth is, you know, from our names or from our lives, is what we did. It could be, you know, our actions. It could be our deeds. The people we met. Maybe we physically carved some name on some structure somewhere. Maybe our initials somewhere, right? But one day we're all gonna be gone. So, like, you know, you leave part of who you are in this world, you know, as like some kind of a name. And I think the idea of storytelling is that, you know, you're telling some kind of a story. And, you know, it could be you personally. It also could be some kind of maybe a character you played. Maybe, you know, or things that you did. Or maybe your version of the story is that you record and you tell someone else's story so that they can be honored, or whatever it might be. So I think this is probably a good first reason. So again, like, you know, for example, like maybe you played Dungeons and Dragons. This is an example that kind of came to my mind. I'm not necessarily for this, but so like I was playing a character in Dungeons and Dragons. Now I try not to bring my real life or the real world too heavily into it, right? I only go just very shallow, and most of the channel is pretty light at the end of the day, anyways. But I was playing a character. I honestly don't even remember how many years ago it was. It might have even been like 6 years ago. It feels like it wasn't that long, but this is probably almost like probably 2018, 2019. But I was playing this character, like he's more like probably like a chaotic neutral. We're playing again. I think like the Magic the Gathering had their like special, like what we call like the 2-color guild packs came out. So I ended up having options, and so I ended up having some options available to me, and I think I got there a little bit late. So it's like I kind of just got stuck with picking one of like 4 colors, or the 4 color. I don't remember how many of the 2 colors there are. I think there's 10 different options for the 2 colors. I think I basically got stuck playing the Gruul. It's the red green. So now I built this character, and like I still remember this character. It was like 6 years ago, right? I think it was like I only played that character for like 2 sessions, and like one of them, like it wasn't even like super long sessions. It was only like a couple hours long, probably 3 hours altogether. But I still remember this character years ago, and like even if my personal name wasn't linked to this character, I mean, the memories of that character might still live on with somebody else, you know, who watched or experienced it, and we had a good time. And you know, the memories are what's going to be left behind. So, you know, I'm just saying, like, you know, I mean, like, you never know. You never know what kind of impact you're going to leave on other people, or other people are going to leave upon you. Yeah, I just have a bit of a cough, so I'm trying to, if I'm gonna cough, I try not, to pause it. I'm just kind of bored, so I just need something to do right now. I got some free time. I'm just kind of sitting out here. Okay, so point number 2. Okay, so I guess like point number 2, I would probably say would be I feel like maybe just on some levels just the idea of escapism. And escapism is a very valuable thing because life is hard. There's pain, there's suffering, there's struggles in life, and it's nice sometimes it's nice just to get away from life. And it doesn't have to be a 100% hard escape, but just even partially, it's a very nice thing. Escaping to a different world, a different reality, and it's like sometimes you can kind of the idea of washing yourself away, kind of washing yourself into entertainment. It's like you get kind of immersed into a story, and all your problems of your life can just temporarily just be kind of put on hold. It's like feeling on a stasis with your problems, and I think that's a very wonderful thing. So, yeah, I think you shouldn't underestimate escapism. Now, again, you should have some kind of wisdom in your brain, right? You don't have to lose yourself to so much to the point where you end up just living in sin or just some bad stuff. Because there is some bad stuff out there in entertainment, but maybe just at least partially losing yourself. It's just it's nice to just not be you and to not have all your problems. You got your job, you got your drama, you got your relationships, with other people, your significant other, you got your bills, you got all these problems in life, and you can just kind of set them at the door and just temporarily not have to deal with them. It's just a very wonderful thing. So honestly, a form of just having some escapism, it can be a wonderful thing in and of itself. Okay, so I'll say that then there's point number 3. All right, so I guess point number 3. I also just want to say, I know I've made a video kind of similar to this one. I talked about storytelling. I talk about a lot about these things, so I'm not trying not to make them identical, right? But we'll just see what I can come up with, though. And even if I do repeat myself, it's going to be technically different each time, right? Okay, so I feel like a third point that you could go with. Sure, why don't I try this one? We'll try something different, right? I guess the idea of honoring cultures and lore and being able to, in a sense, travel to different places in time and to different I guess we call the different the word culture, right? The idea of going to different a different just a people who's a little bit different than your people, or a people who maybe are very similar to yourself, but just maybe they're not, maybe they're from a different time period. So I feel like this helps a lot with empathy. This helps with being able to understand from other people's points of view. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't call evil evil and good good. They're not the same, right? But if you could see from someone else's point of view, I think it helps you to see the bigger scope in life. Again, I do want to try to put some Christian spins on this too, right? So there is the idea of now this might be a 0.3 and kind of a 0.4 kind of combined together. So you see the bigger picture in life. So you can see the world through God's eyes. There are certain video games. Okay, so I'm gonna try to go into a Christian perspective, but I also I also just want to say I'm not a minister or something, right? I'm just some guy who's a Christian. This is all I really am. I just sometimes talk about stuff, and that's about it, right? So I mean, I'm not the most theologically sound. I don't always quote from the Bible every single time, but like I'm just some guy, right? You know, you can see the universe from maybe from God's point of view, and like God looks at things, I believe, from a more neutral lens, like unbiased. You know, it's like he has true 100%, objectivity. We as humans we have very stained points of view. We look at it from very biased points of view. We believe that we as individuals believe that we ourselves and our groups of people, we are the most morally superior, perfect people. And everybody else who doesn't support us or comes from a different group, you know, they're the ones that are wrong and that we're the ones that are right. But when God judges, he doesn't judge with partiality. You know, he sees it like, you know, for perfect neutrality. Like, you know, I might be very angry. Maybe somebody hurt me in the past. You know, they offended me. You know, they looked at me the wrong way. You know, I don't know, whatever it might be. Maybe I felt betrayed. But you know, God in heaven, he's their creator. He created me and he created them. Or when I say me, you know, like you the viewer, right? Like you the viewer, and then whoever the other person might be in your life. He created you and he created them. He also created me. He created us all. So the idea, I guess, like going back and more into this idea, right? Again, like you can travel. Okay, here's an example that came into my mind. It came to my mind earlier. I'll try to elaborate a little more into it. So an example was when I was playing the video game Fallout 4. So okay, I'm gonna be real with you. This is gonna be a fairly decent sized spoiler if you haven't played that game. So like skip ahead, right? If you haven't played through Fallout 4. If you haven't played Fallout 4, like you should go out and play it. So it's like, because that game's really good. I mean, some people don't like that game, but I mean, I also love Fallout. It's still a good game. It's not as good as Fallout 3 maybe, right? Or New Vegas, but it's still pretty good. I mean, you're still gonna have a good time. Okay, so like, no spoiler warning. So there's this man called, I think he's just called Kellogg. Kellogg, kind of like the cereal, right? Kellogg. But during the main story, your son Sean, he ends up getting kidnapped, or at least, okay, like you perceive certain things to be reality, but you don't really actually 100% always know. But that's the beauty of it, right? Like you're like in the Garden of Eden. You know, and it's like God put these blinders on you. You don't really know any better. You're innocent. And like, you know, you come into the world and you kind of see the world, you know, as you know, from like, you know, your place of innocence. So you think Kellogg is like, you know, like the devil. He's a bad man. But at one point in the game, you confront him and then you end up, you know, basically he dies. Basically you kill him. It's a combat, right? You know, you're looking for your son, and he fights you, and he's basically like, you know, I'm trying to be too crass, but he's a big giant dick basically, and he fights you and you kill him, and you end up collecting some kind of a cybernetic attachment from his brain, and eventually you take it to this doctor lady. I think it's called like Good Neighbor. And you end up going through this machine. It's like a simulation. You can see this man's memories, and by being able to see his memories, again, you might view him as like an evil man, but it does help you to empathize. It's like being able to see someone's younger when they're a child, when they're becoming a young man, when they become like an adult, and maybe like, you know, another 20 years on top of that pass. Now, I don't actually know how old he is. I think he was like probably in his 40s. Maybe he's like 40 years old. Maybe he's in his 30s. It can be really hard to tell, right? It doesn't matter. It's a fictional character. But you saw that, like, you know, he grew up in like, you know, the post-apocalyptic worlds. And I think it's like his father was abusive to him, and like his mother loved him, and his mother basically encouraged him. She gave him like some kind of a pistol or something. And she encouraged him. Eventually, I think his mother died, and he ended up I think he left his house or something. I mean, I can't remember the exact details one for one, but he had a hard upbringing, and he lived in a hard world that involved survival, and you can really start to empathize with the man. And he ended up becoming a mercenary. He learned that he became ruthless, because if you become ruthless in the world, people basically can't push you around because you're so powerful that anyone who tries to oppose you is themselves going to be defeated. Basically, it's almost like an inflated sense of pride, or just like very pride, or very even like the word like ruthless, like no mercy basically. Because if you don't give them mercy, then you'll never have to be at someone else's mercy. So like you learn this, you see how he becomes a ruthless, like cutthroat, a mercenary, maybe even like an assassin. Eventually, he shoots his way through a bunch of his enemies, and he also basically pisses off a whole bunch of other people. And then, on top of which, he gets his way into the Institute, the big bad boogeyman of Fallout, and he demonstrates his skills, and basically the Institute accepts him. And then he works his way through the ranks, and eventually, your story and his story come to one together, and then then eventually he dies, right? Which, to be honest, he does that to himself. He brought his own destruction on his own head. So that's just an example of being able to empathize with somebody else. Now, Fallout, as far as I know, obviously it's not like quote unquote real. Now, it is kind of set in the real world, but it's set in like a post-apocalyptic world. I think it's supposed to take place in like the year, again, like it's hard to keep track of my numbers, like 2200, 2400. Obviously it hasn't come, that time has not come. And who's to say what's going to happen in the future? No, I don't know. Maybe we will have a post-apocalyptic, the way the world's going, maybe we will. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll have like a utopia, paradise. I have no idea. Probably something in the middle. But being able to go to this world that's like a fictional world, and honestly, even Fallout, to be honest, like I know it's really hard to keep track of what is fantasy, what is fictional. I feel like Fallout is borderline like almost a fantasy. Like, I mean, really, to be honest, anything that's not like one-to-one directly real, in and of itself, is basically like fantasy. There's varying levels, but it's like there are big monsters you fight. There are tons of stuff that's borderline unhinged. Now, it is technically in the real world, but it also kind of isn't too. But being able to go to this world and experience these characters that could really help you to empathize. Now, you looked at Kellogg as like he's like the devil. But when you empathize with his suffering, you saw he was treated badly. He had to become tough to survive a hard world. Now, that doesn't necessarily justify his actions, but at least you can understand now, right? And this is just an example of going to a different world. Again, like what was the main point of this, right? Like as a Christian, you want to enjoy stuff like storytelling or immersion. I've been talking about this more lately. I mean, it also interests me a lot. Hopefully it interests you also, but going to different worlds, it can help you to be empathetic. Because when you see the bigger picture, in holiness, through God's eyes, rather than just your own eyes, you might understand. It doesn't justify their actions necessarily, but at least you can understand. So yeah, I think there was a combination of probably about, point 3 and point 4. Okay, so like the first, point number 1 was the idea of kind of like leaving your mark on the world, right? And then point number 2 was basically escapism. I think point number 3 was basically being able to travel to different worlds, and then point number 4 was like probably I would say like being able to see the bigger picture. So what would I say that point number 5 could be? Sure, okay. This is a point I've made in the past. Now, I don't want to say it's like controversial, but like sometimes, it's like you can't always, again, it's basically, I'd say point number 5 is the idea of like basically learning to, what's the best way, how the best way to phrase it is like basically like, taking your hand off the wheel in a sense. and like learning to release a level of control, I feel like. And even the idea of storytelling. Now this is kind of an extremely big argument, but I don't know how condensed I can make this, but like in life you can't control everything, right? Now, like, I mean, okay, here's an example. Like, you know, I kind of have this cough. I haven't been feeling that great. Now, honestly, my throat's been feeling a lot better, but I mean, I had a really good time. I went up to this convention. I had a really good time. And then afterwards, now I kind of been feeling a little bit sick. I don't think they're linked together, but I had a really good high, and I had like kind of a really bad low. And now I'm kind of just at this middle point. Like, you know, the highs kind of wore off. I feel like kind of like crap. Now I'm just kind of tired. I'm very happy, but I'm also kind of exhausted, right? I can't control either of those scenarios. And I think that's something like video games, movies, television shows, reading books, you know, the wide variety of, you know, I'm sure there's tons of other stuff out there, right? It could be entertainment, it could be, you know, could be anything. In holiness, it could be even reading, like, you know, God's Bible. But there are things in the universe that you can't control, and really you can't understand. I know the Bible talks about, you know, it's not basically how it's not wise to dwell on matters that are beyond one's understanding. And like it also talks about like how, like, you know, again, like you can't control like you can't control everything, and you can't control your outcomes, and you can't even control what's going to happen to you. You can't control the fact that you were born, and really in a non-dark way, right? You can't really control your own death. You know, we're not going to go down that dark road, but basically in holiness, God is the author, and He creates people, and He decides when they're going to be born, and He decides when they're going to die. And like, you know, it is what it is, right? And I don't think any of us are truly ever going to 100% understand this. I don't even know if we're going to understand it after we're gone. I just don't know, right? I think a lot of people want to believe that we're gonna be able to learn the full truth. The reality is, I don't know if that's actually accurate. I mean, it's like a coping mechanism, right? In the Bible, it talks about like, you know, like how the dead know nothing. When you die, like your brain or your vision or whatever, it shuts off and shuts down, and then that's it. So it's like, you know, that's both a very hard thing to accept. It's also like a mercy. Like, you know, that's a mercy, right? Like, you know, your loved ones will never truly have to know and understand your life. That's all, well, the pros and cons, right? Like, you know, say I was married and I had children, and, you know, 200 years from now, you know, I mean, one day I'm gonna die. It's just a reality, you know. It's like, right? I mean, hopefully I have a good, long, happy life. You know, so do whoever's out there, right? But you don't know when and if that ending is going to come. And, you know, you can't expect that eventually it's going to come. But like your children, you're like, maybe you have like great grandchildren, like, you know, say like you one day you're going to be dead, and your children are going to be dead, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, like your great grandchildren. Like year 2300 comes or whatever, however many down the line it would be. You will never be able to experience, you know, your ancestors, you know, any of their happinesses or any of their suffering. You'll never know. And like, you never really knew any of the people who came before you. Like the year 1700, you never knew any of those people, any real capacity. Now, maybe there's a book somewhere that has some of their name was written down. Maybe you knew one of your family's last names, hypothetically. Maybe you had access to at least some of it. You probably never knew them, and they never knew you. And those people from the past are never going to know your ancestors. You know, because, like, you know, we like the dead know nothing. It's a mercy, right? Okay, so let's try to go back to the main point, right? Okay, so like the main point basically is that, you know, basically there are matters in the universe that are beyond one's understanding. And okay, so going to the idea, I guess, like what was the idea of the video is about storytelling, basically, as a Christian. So let's try to wrap this more back into it. Okay, so I feel like storytelling can be good in the sense that you can like you can say you're playing a video game. Like one of the ideas that sometimes I like to go with the first thing that comes to my mind, like a gut reaction, right? I was playing the game. I must have played this like it feels like forever ago. I played Fire Emblem Three Houses. So it's like that. Honestly, that game has phenomenal storytelling. I mean, I have not played Encore, or it was Echoes or Encore. It's the new one, right? After I have not played that one, but apparently the story sucks. But you know, I might eventually watch it though. But Three Houses is like, you know, like you couldn't possibly control that story, or the characters, or any of the things in it. You know, whether there's some dark monster beast that comes out, or whether or not, like, you know, there's warm, happy memories. Like, you couldn't control that. And I think that's wonderful. You know, it offers a level of personal detachment from the character and from the world and the story. And sometimes you can just, like, you can just enjoy the story. It kind of, even the idea of what I was talking about before, I think one of the points, right? Like, kind of wash yourself in the entertainment. Or even like a level of escapism, right? I think that was the point I made. You can't control it. And I think not having to control everything, I think honestly it makes the human being very happy. Cause like, you know, I don't have to control the story. I can just sit down and I can just watch it, and I can just enjoy it. I don't have to make those moral choices. I'm not the one doing it. I can just sit back and just have a good time. And I think there's value to that. And I can enjoy the characters, enjoy the, you know, the content. Or whatever it's going to be. And you know, there is a little bit of wisdom to this. So yeah, okay. So yeah, again, like, you know, not having to control things, I think it makes people happy. So okay, so yeah, I guess those are just 5 points to the idea of, I would say, you know, storytelling, you know, from like a, you know, why it's good for a Christian to enjoy storytelling. So again, like, you know, I mean, like, again, so this channel, I'm trying to think. I don't always have a major point, you know, behind why the channel is what it is. I mean, it is good to have a level of clarity too, but I feel like, you know, generally this is more of like a neutral channel. I just talk about stuff that's like, you know, probably like very light, non-serious topics most of the time. You know, it could be entertainment. I mean, I'm trying to stay away from like politics and like heavy drama and like, you know, big real world crises and stuff. You know, all that kind of stuff. I try to focus a little more on like some light stuff, just some normal, vanilla, regular stuff. So yeah, yeah. I like watching stuff and enjoying stuff. I like watching people like stream on YouTube and whatnot, and like, you know, hopefully you do also. And like, I think it's nice to get lost in a world, and, you know, again, like, also just, you know, like as a Christian, we're just human beings, right? It's not like you couldn't watch a secular person make a video like this. Like, you can find value from it. I think it's also good to, you know, it's good to every once in a while, you know, also put like, you know, try to look from like a Christian point of view on things. Like, I know that I could probably go deeper into these issues too, but like, I mean, like, I'm not like some hardcore Orthodox like Christian, but like, I'm also not like, you know, I mean, I have faith too. It's like, I mean, I do, you know, I do believe and I do invest into into these values, but it's just a little more like a lighter channel sometimes. So yeah, I guess, oh yeah, also in the comment section below, let me know what your thoughts are on this issue, and like, why do you enjoy entertainment as a Christian, and what are some themes that, you know, you can find or have, or what are some content that you find yourself regularly going back to? It's like, I mean, there's a thousand titles out there. Like, what game do you just keep playing? You keep finding yourself wanting to keep playing. You know, it's like, even if it's not a game everybody else has heard of, like, you know, sometimes I find myself going back to some of these more like normal vanilla games. Like, even this game here was called like Slay the Spire. There's only 4 characters. Honestly, I still enjoy playing it every once in a while. Now, I kind of get sick of it, but I mean, it's still a very fun game. Like, I do like a lot of the more traditional open world, like, RPG games, like, there's Kingdom Come Deliverance, or like Fallout 4 or Skyrim, like The Witcher 3. I don't know. I mean, there's tons of games out there. Like, I do probably more like comfort games, right? Like, I find myself kind of going back to wanting to play those more. I mean, I think because they're just so well made. The world feels real. I think that's a net positive. So, yeah, let me know what is your comfort game? Why is it your comfort game? Or or like maybe your comfort television show, or your comfort game movie on YouTube, or whatever it is, or like maybe your favorite movie, or your movie trilogy, or your movie we call like movie 7 movies, or called like a saga. Not saga. I don't even know whatever a 7 movie series is. But that because that's a lot of movies. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. Thanks for watching. God is good.